The day I almost died. Hello, y'all. I'm Diana Brienne. Well, I come on here and I talk about wisdom and inspiration and motivation. And I think part of wisdom, motivation, and inspiration is hearing true stories about people's lives and how they overcame obstacles. Okay. And so this one, I'm not sure how to title it. If I should title it Brain Aneurysm, if I should title it The Wooden Hanger. I don't know. I don't know what I'll title it as really yet. And so we'll see. But I'm going to tell you a story, and I've told it in a previous video. Okay, I had a previous video that I did, but I only kept it like 10 minutes long. And I think often stories are so much more, there's so many more details that are important. And I thought I would redo this one in entirety because I think it deserves it. I think it's a story that may help other people, whatever they're facing in life. And this happened to me about 10 years ago. And so I'm trying to share relevant stories from my life, either stories about my life or stories about people that I know or that I've met and things that they've gone through. Now, when I share stories about other people, I don't share their identity. I just don't do that, okay, unless they've told me that it's okay. And so this story is about 10 years old, and it's what I went through. Well, as y'all know, I'm very much into fitness and health and taking care of my body and taking care of everything about myself. And because fitness for me is extremely important. It really is. And so I've always ate healthy, exercised regularly, drank water, did all the right things in my life. Okay, I always did. And so about 10 years ago, I was homeschooling. I think at that time I had put one of my kids back in public school and I was homeschooling two of my children. And we had like a sunroom office in Marietta, Georgia. It was a beautiful home. It kind of was wooded and really beautiful with like a little rolling hill. My kids would play on that hill, and it was just a magical time in so many ways. And but I had the computer set up because they were on an online public school program that had just really come out. And it was school done at home, so homeschool, but it was really public school done at home. But I was just, the one supervising it. I was the learning coach or whatever they called it back then. And I'm going to do another video on homeschooling again, I think. I've done videos on homeschooling, and it was wonderful for us. And I did it on and off with my kids. And my last son, I did homeschooling with his last 5 years of school, and he graduated, but it was a public school done at home. And he graduated with honors, and he had a real graduation ceremony and a prom. He got prom king twice. My daughter she went to public school and she got homecoming queen. So had a homecoming queen and a prom king. And so anyhow, I was homeschooling. And I remember my one of her virtual teachers, some teacher that had taught her class, had suddenly passed away. And so she was calling me from another part of the house. And I was in another part of the house while they were doing their schoolwork. I think they were like 7 and 8 or something like that. And I was coming back. And my daughter said, Mom, you got to come here quick. And so that we had a mother-in-law suite that my mother had lived in when she was alive, and towards the end of her life. And it was adjacent to the kitchen, adjacent to the sunroom. And so I took the shortcut, and at that point my husband was putting his suit jackets and everything like that in there, and the shades were pulled down so that it was kind of dark in there as I was passing through. It was in the morning hours, probably about 9 o'clock in the morning, 8:30, 9 o'clock in the morning. And so I was passing through there, and I was passing quickly because my daughter wanted me. And I normally don't rush, and I know not to rush, but I was kind of rushing through at a fast pace, not really rushing, but going pretty fast through the mother-in-law suite to see what my daughter wanted. And as I was doing so, there had been a hanger, one of those big wooden hangers. My husband had a suit jacket on, but it was kind of sticking out. and for some reason it was sticking out, but it was wedged against the door, so it was it wasn't like where you bump into it and it'll move. It wasn't that type of thing. It was kind of wedged there, so it was sticking out and it was solid in there. And I was running through at eye level. I whacked into it in my right eye, and I mean it was forceful. It wasn't like a tiny little boom. I mean, I'm amazed that I still have 20/25 vision. And I think in that eye, I have actually 20/20. How I didn't end up, I mean, in so many ways. And this part of the story will refer down the line to the rest of the part of the story. And it knocked me to the ground. I mean, knocked me to the ground. I was, thank God, I was able to see. And, but I knew I had hit with blunt force. And so immediately I called my friend and I said, please come over. Please come over right now. I'm afraid that maybe, I'm going to have a brain bleed, or I'm going to hemorrhage, and I need you here. So she came over, and because I didn't want to leave my kids at home, if something happened to me, they wouldn't know what to do at that age. And so she stayed with me for about an hour. And I had a dental appointment that day. And I thought, if I start bleeding in the brain or hemorrhage, I'll be in the dental chair. And so that's a good thing, right? Okay. So I was really traumatized from that. I didn't have a black eye, nothing like that. But it was very, very forceful. And I mean, at that time, I remember reading in the news just a month or two before, a very famous actress or actor's wife was in a skiing accident where she hit her head, but she said she was okay. She went back to her room and then she died. And so I was I was thinking about that. I thought, this was very forceful. I should go to the doctors, but I'm okay. We'll see. So I didn't go to the doctors. I went to the dentist. Well, lo and behold, they were taking out a wisdom tooth that didn't need to be taken out. But because I was at the end of my dental insurance year, how the cap on the year or something, he suggested I get it taken out because it was way in the back. And I did. And, I shouldn't have had it. But as he was taking it out, he broke the tooth off. He broke it off halfway. Couldn't get it out. So for the next 3 hours, he's banging with a little silver hammer trying to get it out. I mean, my head, not that I'd just been traumatized with the wooden hanger. Now I was traumatized with this broken tooth that he broke. So long story short, I had to end up having emergency surgery that day to get the tooth removed from a different doctor. And I mean, it was just such a mess that day. And my kids were in the waiting room, so I had to, the dentist's wife took them out to get something to eat. And then my friend came and took my kids home. My friend came over, got my kids. I think that's how it was. My husband came home. I mean, what a mess that day was. So I got through it. Okay, I got through it. And things seemed to go back to normal and got the tooth fixed and everything. So my husband was getting ready to move up here to, it's still in the South, but to a different town. And it was about 8 hours away, 8 hours away. And we had a motorhome. And a beautiful motorhome, and he was going to live in it that year until we moved up here with him. And the reason I was staying there was my kids had one kid in school, and the other two were in the public school program. So if we moved states, we couldn't keep that public school program. So I wanted to wait till school and the end of the year. Plus, we were getting the whole house remodeled inside because we were preparing to sell it or rent it, and which we ended up renting it for several years, and then we sold it. But many ways I wish we hadn't sold it now, but we did. So anyhow, that was what was going on. But beforehand, he was taking the two boys on a scouting trip, a big scouting trip, and I think they were gone about 4 or 5 days. And over that time period, it was just my daughter and I there, and in the middle of the night I woke up and I started choking. I'd never choked before. Never had an anxiety attack. Really wasn't having anxiety of any kind, And now I was choking. I mean, literally, I felt like my throat was closing. So I called my sister, who was a night owl. She stayed up till like 7 o'clock in the morning. She was, I always say she worked the night shift, but she was just, she slept during the day, and she would be up all night. So thank goodness. I always knew I had someone to call in the middle of the night. And so I called her. I said, Ruth, I'm choking. So we decided at the end of the conversation that it was an anxiety attack. And I'd never had one before. I wasn't having any anxiety, but we determined, because we didn't know what else it was. I mean, it sounded like an anxiety attack, but I was really choking. It was so scary. It was so frightening. And so the next morning, it was all gone, and I was okay. And that night, I was talking to a friend on the phone, and my daughter had been in bed upstairs, and we had these like little wooden staircase that went upstairs. It was a pretty little staircase, and kind of wrapped around. And I said, hold on a minute. I think I hear my daughter up. I need to go check on her and see what she wants. Because I was in the living room, and as I went around the corner, there was this animal sitting about the second step down, like a big, huge possum. And I can tell you, I have no idea why this was, but that animal had red eyes. It was red eyes. And some people say that possums and that their eyes will turn red at night or something. I don't know. But whatever this was, it scared me to death. And it stared at me. It wouldn't move. It would not move. It stared me down. And so I clapped my hands like this real fast. And it ran back up the steps, never to be seen again. Of course, we had the exterminator, everybody come out, nothing, never to be seen again. Was it a sign of something? I don't know. So I went back to my telephone call and I said, oh my gosh, I got to go. This is what happened. And about a day or two, it was a day or okay, so my husband got back a day or two later with the kids, with the boys, and they had a great trip. But the night before, I had a pain in my back. So I'm starting to have all these different things go on. And I had a pain in my back, okay? And it felt like someone was pressing their thumb on my back. And I thought it was because I carry a big purse, because I carry everything. I carry the kitchen sink in my purse. And so I came down steps, and my husband was home at that point. The kids were already up. Came down, I said, honey, I'm going to go, and I'm going to get my cup of coffee, and I'm going back upstairs because I have this pain in my back. And I went over to peek in to see what the kids were doing in the sunroom, and all of a sudden I felt myself go down to the floor. I felt myself go down to the floor. I let myself down, but I was collapsing. And I went down to the floor, and I was out. And my husband came over, and he shook me. He said, Diana, wake up, Diana. I was completely clammy, completely wet and clammy. And so there I was laying on the floor, and my husband was shaking me, and I remember him helping me up, and I came to. And I remember staggering into the mother-in-law suite, which was right off of the sunroom, right off of the kitchen, and I plopped myself down on the bed in there. And my leg, what I remember, two things. My left leg was just nonstop quivering. I couldn't get it to stop. And my heart felt like it was coming out of my chest. Boom, boom, boom. Now, an anxiety attack, from my understanding, an anxiety attack, usually they go away after an hour or something like that, the choking and the thumping and all of that. This did not go away for about 4 months, 2 months with the thumping. And I had to end up they did cardiac examinations on me. I had to wear a monitor for a month. So long story short, I was laying there on the bed, and we had to take the motorhome over to get the step fixed before my husband went off with it. And because, he was going, his job, his career was taking him elsewhere, and we were going to follow in about 9 months. And after I had the house renovated, after I had the kids done with school, and then we were going to follow. So we would kind of bounce back and forth, and I would go up and visit him, and the kids and I would go up and visit him in the motorhome, which we did later, and it was wonderful. It was like going on a little mini trip, but actually, kind of fast forwarding and jumping all over with this story, but I don't want to forget certain points. We went up and at one point, before I knew what really was going on with me, my husband asked me to drive up with the kids, and I was very hesitant, but I thought I could do it. And I got halfway on that 8-hour trip, and I started really choking. And I carried a spit cup with me because I was salivating so much. I mean, it was terrible. I carried paper towels with me, everything. I didn't want to go out anywhere. Something was going on neurologically, but I didn't know what. And I'd gone to the doctors. I had ended up going to 16 doctors, but I didn't go to the doctor right away when I was in the mother-in-law suite. So I said, honey, you take the kids in the motorhome. I'll drive in front of you, and I'll take the expedition. And then, because he needed someone to bring him back. So he did. He took the kids, and I went ahead about 10 minutes beforehand, and I got almost to the motorhome place, and I had to pull over in a parking lot. I couldn't make it. My leg would not stop quivering. My leg would not stop. And so I called my husband on the cell phone. I said, bye-bye, honey. Love you, Mr. Jack. I call him Mr. Jack. And he's going golfing. He goes golfing. He's a golfer. And so anyhow, lo and behold, what happened was I was able to walk, even though my leg was just constantly quivering. And so I actually ran to the motorhome because he was parked alongside the road on a busy road. And I ran from the parking lot to the motorhome, got in, and I called my sister. I said, I don't know what's going on here. I do not know what's going on. She said, well, you need to go to the doctors. I said, I don't want to go to the doctors. I said, my husband's leaving. What if they put me in the hospital? I said, no. I said, I can't do that. I said, I'm just going to wait and see if this thing passes. Didn't know what it was. And so we had to end up having somebody from the dealership take my husband back to get the expedition, to come back over to the motorhome to pick me and the kids up at that point. And so we drove home. So anyhow, my husband got the step on the motorhome fixed. He took off about a day or two later. I was scared to death. I said, please don't leave. I'm so scared. He said, honey, I got you. And he did. He had to. His, career would have been on the line had he not left. And so he went, and I stayed. And I was so scared because I had my 3 children. I was totally responsible for them. I didn't let them know I was sick. And, friendship is a funny thing. I had one friend, because remember, we had moved to this town. We weren't from this town. So I'd made a really good friend, and I'm a fantastic friend. I'm an amazing friend. I'll support you all the way. And not everybody's like that. And I found who was my real friends and who really wasn't. Or at least were mediocre friends. And so suddenly my friend that we were so close with kind of disappeared, when there was a major issue and I might need someone to watch the kids or something like that. And I was really disappointed greatly, to be honest. But anyhow, she disappeared during that time. I mean, we're still friends. Okay, we're still friends to this day, but you have fair weather friends in life, and I have a lot of fair weather friends, but I have a lot of great friends. So there's a place for every kind of friendship, but just don't treat a fair weather friend like somebody who's going to be there for you when you need them. And I learned that. So anyhow, there was this old couple that lived next door, and I had never even met them, but my husband had gone over and said, hey, Diana is, she's having some issues, physical health issues. We don't know what it is. Can you please keep an eye on her and the kids? And so they did. And they were amazing those months that I was there. They were absolutely amazing. They were amazing support. I would go over and talk to them, share with them. And there were times that I didn't want to drive with the kids. And so they would watch the kids kind of, and while I went out to do grocery shop or whatever I needed to do and get right back home. And, but I was progressively getting sicker and sicker. I was getting weak, and my heart was just thumping nonstop. So I went to the doctor. He told me it was menopause. He said, it's menopause. And I said, no, this is not menopause. he said, well, maybe it's anxiety. I said, it's not anxiety. I have no anxiety other than that I'm sick. I said, I have anxiety that I'm sick. But I didn't think to tell him about when I whacked into that hanger. I didn't think about that. Okay, I didn't think about that. So finally, I had to beg him to send me to a cardiologist, literally beg him. He didn't want to do it, and beg him to send me to an endocrinologist. And the endocrinologist thought maybe I might have adrenal cancer, which just scared me. And it took 6 weeks to find out that I didn't. But in that 6 weeks, I'm, making boxes for my kids with all their baby mementos and sealing them up, great big boxes, and sealing them up and putting "Don't Open Till You're 30" with all their little baby shoes and their little baby pictures and their little books and the things that they did and their little projects. And I put their names on it and put it in the attic, because I wanted them to have those things. I didn't want those things to get lost or thrown away, because I was really preparing for the worst. And I remember because they said, you may have adrenal cancer, and, which was extremely scary. And I was getting weaker by the day. And then I began to choke. And I was wearing this monitor, and my heart in the middle of the night, how it would be, my heart was always beating, boom, 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 boom. But then it would go thump, and it would throw me out of bed in the middle of the night, thump. And so I would call up the 1-800 number to the heart monitor people, and I'd say, am I okay? And they'd say, we can't tell you, your doctor will have to tell you. And the doctor couldn't tell me until the 30 days was up. And when the 30 days was up, he said, it came out fine. So what was going on with me? What was going on with me? Was I crazy? Was I having anxiety? Was I having menopause? Was I having anxiety, panic attacks? I mean, I had gotten on these sites on YouTube about how to get over anxiety and how to get over anxiety attacks and what an anxiety attack was. And it sounded like maybe I have an anxiety attack. I didn't think so, but I'll believe anything at that point. So I decided that, maybe I have anxiety. And my sister and I said, maybe you have anxiety. Well, the doctor gave me a nerve pill. And that lasted about one day because I don't like to take pills. And so then started the choking again. But this time the choking did not go away. Felt like I had someone tightening something around my throat. Non-stop. And then I began to spit a lot, spit. And so I couldn't go out anywhere because I had to carry these paper towels around and a spit cup. I mean, it was awful. So now the thumping went away. So that was a good thing, right? But now I had the choking. It had moved, and it did not go away like an anxiety attack. After an hour, you're better. This never went away. It just got worse. And I would have to prop myself up. And we had a beautiful fireplace in the dining room there. And I would lay on the wooden floor next to the fireplace, and I would listen to old Catherine Kuhlman miracle services, which I grew up on. She's long been gone, long past. And it gave me hope. It gave me comfort. I had one friend, and he was extremely supportive of me during that time. He checked on me all the time via email, telephone call. And he was, I have to say, he was an amazing friend through that time period. And, because my husband was extremely busy. My husband was very aware of my friend. It was a platonic friendship, but he was extremely supportive. And so I had decided it was anxiety. It was an anxiety attack, but then the doctors say maybe it's adrenal cancer, and then, maybe it's this, maybe it's that. I had to carry jars of urine. I had to go pee in a cup and put it in this big container, and every 2 days take it and put it in a refrigerator, and every 2 days take it to the hospital, and then they would send it to some major university 1,000 miles away to go analyze it. And, I was going through one doctor after another, at one specialist after another, and nobody could figure it out. Nobody could figure this out. And, so I decided, my doctor wasn't being all that nice. It was like trying to pull teeth from somebody to get him to give me another doctor, a specialist. And so I switched doctors. And so when I switched doctors, he called me up. He was so mad. He personally called me up and said, you can never come back here again because you have, he said, after all I did for you and you choose to leave me. He was mad at me for leaving him. But he wasn't, it was so difficult. Even if he thought it was psychological, he should have sent me, just kept, making sure that it wasn't something physical, which it turned out to be. And so, I just got sicker and sicker. So it became, that was a July timeframe when all that took place. And probably May timeframe when I actually ran into the hangar, or sometime before that, I don't know. It was a little while before that when I ran into the hangar. And so lo and behold, I am getting through this, and I'm just getting weaker and weaker. My husband came down for Thanksgiving, and I always put the tree up the day before Thanksgiving or the day after Thanksgiving. And so I think I put it up Thanksgiving Day. No, the day after Thanksgiving. The day after Thanksgiving, I was putting it up. I think it was a Friday. And I was so weak. I would put one bulb up and have to sit down for 10 minutes. Another bulb up, have to sit down for 10 minutes. And I told my sister, I said, oh my gosh, I don't know what I'm going to do. She said, you've got to find out what this is. There's something really, really bad going on. And so I was so weak, and my husband was there, and in the middle of the night, I got up. I didn't tell him. I didn't tell anybody. And I just got in my expedition. And I had already gone to an ER one time. I thought I was, maybe it was a heart attack. I didn't know. This is back when it was thumping all the time. And they sent me home, said, you're okay. So I thought, do I go back to an ER? I'm not going to the same one. I'm going to a different one, a major university hospital in the Atlanta area, well known. And I sat out there at about 5 o'clock in the morning in the dark in my expedition by the ER. And I said, you know what? Do I really want to go back in? They're not going to believe me, and nothing's going to come out of this. Now, about 2 weeks prior to this, I had a dream. Now, remember, my mom had passed. She had passed to the other side. And she came to me in a dream, because probably about 2 years later. And in this dream, I was laying on a gurney in a cafeteria, waiting to go into surgery with half of my head shaved. And I said, Mom, why are you so edgy? Why are you so upset? She said, they've got to get there right away. They've got to do this surgery right away. You have a lesion on the left side of your brain. I had that dream, lesion on the left side of your brain. Well, I thought lesion meant cancer. Okay, I think it can be, but not always, and not in this case, not in this situation. And so I ended up walking into the ER, and I told the lady behind the desk, I said, for some reason, these words came out of my mouth, because I knew if I said I had a heart attack, or I think I'm having a heart attack, so I said, I think I'm having a stroke, which these were a lot of symptoms of stroke. And she said, okay. They took me back, put me on a gurney, and I told the ER doctor, young doctor, I said, my mom told me that I have a lesion on the left side of the brain. He said, really? He said, which is your mother a doctor? I said, no, she just passed to the other side. He said, you mean she's passed on? I said, yes, she's passed on, but she came to me in a dream and told me I have a lesion on the left side of the brain, and I feel like I'm having a stroke. I'm having numbness, tingling, I'm choking, I've had heart, I'm weak, all this stuff is going on. When I walk, I lose my balance, I run into the wall. Matter of fact, when I was baking the turkey, that I fell against the wall and cut my arm open. And so I had that going on. So I had to get a tetanus shot. I lost my balance. I was running into walls. The floor felt like it was lifting. When I drove down the road, I felt like the front of the car was, going to lift up over top of me. It was really weird sensations I was having, just everything. I was having pains, just you name it. I was having all this stuff. At one point, I thought maybe we had mold, so I went out and got a mold detectors and had a mold man come, I didn't know what this was. I did not know what this was. And then I thought it was something called radon. So I opened up all my windows, I got to the point of being a little neurotic because I just did not know what this was. And I think most people would have just completely caved in, but I couldn't cave in because I was a mom. I had 3 kids. I couldn't let them know I was sick. I would walk to the bus stop every day with them, and I would pray to get back, because I put my kids back in school, I think, at that point, and because I was going through all this. And I would walk, and it was dark in the morning, and so I had to walk them to the bus stop, which was only like a half a block away, but I would pray all the way home that I could get home. And I remember I wore this big flowered, and I still have it to this day, a kind of velvety dress for my nightgown, and it had big red roses on it. And I would pray all the way back from the bus stop that I was going to make it home without passing out. And it was such a scary time. I didn't like to drive. And every time I drove, I looked for little places to pull off at, places that I could pull off if I needed to pull off. And I remember, I'm a mom, I'm responsible, I'm the sole person there taking care of my kids. I didn't want to let them know I was sick. I had my neighbors there overseeing stuff. My friend kind of just disappeared, fair weather friend. All my other friends didn't live there, and my mom had passed on. My sister was in another state. I really didn't want her coming down. I mean, she would have been more of a, it would have been more challenging with her there than by myself. And I was functional. I mean, I would have never, if I wasn't, then I wouldn't have been, but I was functional. I was walking around. I was functioning. I was doing everything I needed to do. So was this psychological? What was it? So it was Thanksgiving weekend, so they had to call somebody in for a CAT scan, to do the CAT scan. And so they came in, they wheeled me down, they put me in this big tube. I hated this tube. So they had to medicate me, with like a, I don't know, Valium or something, which I didn't like, but they put me in there. So I was kind of, because I was so claustrophobic in this machine that I was in there for like what seemed 2 hours. And it's so close to your face, and it's so scary. It really is scary to be in that machine. For me, it was. And so as I'm laying there, I'm kind of rattling, just kind of dreary, and rattling off to the lady through the microphone that I had above me, telling her the story of what my mom said. And I said, my mom said I have a lesion on the left side of the brain. And she said, what did your mom say? What did your mom say? I said, well, my mom said I have a lesion on the left side of the brain. And she asked me that all the way as she wheeled me back to the ER. So we get back to the ER, and I'm laying there, and the doctor comes in, and I figure he's going to tell me to go home, like they did before. And I said, okay, I know you're going to tell me to go home, and everything's okay. And he said, no, I'm going to keep you. You're going to be admitted. I said, why am I going to be admitted? He said, you have a lesion on the left side of your brain, just like your mother had said. Oh my gosh. I said, is it cancer? He said, no, it's a broken blood vessel. You had a brain bleed, you had a brain hemorrhage, you had a aneurysm. He said, do you know that most people die or are not in any kind of condition to walk or move or anything? He said, it must have been, from my understanding, some vessel in my brain that wasn't a major one, but it was a more minor one, and it broke. And that, I don't understand the medical terminology about this and what exactly happened, but this is what they told me, that by that point they couldn't, they put me in the hospital, they hooked me up, they gave me all kinds of stuff, I think they gave me heparin, or I don't know, they gave me an IV, and I was in the room, but now there was an answer. But now I began to put it all together. I had run into that wooden hanger forcefully. Probably it would have killed most people, or at least damaged their eye. And here I was walking around for all these months, choking, numb. My arms would go numb. I'd have to beat my arm against the wall. I'd have to beat my leg against the wall. My back would go numb. I mean, my body was going numb. Running into walls, losing balance, weak. Just everything. Everything was going on. And prior to that, about that time, they started giving me all these different medications. I can't remember what they were, but I think they made things worse. And so, I had, a neurologist, or I had all kinds of doctors at that point. Now they're taking it seriously. And even the new doctor had kind of just, wasn't taking it too seriously that I had that I had left the one doctor for and got the new doctor. But now everybody was taking me seriously. Well, now there's a real issue. Now there's something really that did happen. And we'll give you all the specialists that you want. It wasn't like pulling teeth anymore. They were giving me what I needed all along. And I was the one, my mom came to me in a dream. Thanks to my mom. She saved my life, maybe, So I was in the hospital, and then when they sent me home, my husband was there. He stayed with me for about 2 weeks to make sure that I was okay, and that, they didn't do surgery on me at that point. They didn't do any clipping or anything like that. It was done. I mean, it had been done. Apparently this had happened a few months before, or whenever it happened, and all those symptoms, those many, many traveling symptoms, those symptoms that didn't go together, that didn't even point in the same direction, were all related to this. And so did it go back to the wooden hanger? I think so. Now, I'm not a medical expert in this area, in this particular area, so I can't say. I'm just telling you what they told me, okay? And so, was it a brain aneurysm? Was it something else? I mean, what was it? They had determined and said it was a brain aneurysm. And I would like to say that once we found out, everything was good, but I still had all kinds of different symptoms over the next probably 6 months while I was still there in that house. And I gradually began to get better. I mean, I could feel better. I was okay. The choking finally had stopped after, I think I had the choking for 3 months, 3 solid months. And so the choking had finally stopped. And that was the biggest relief, because choking for 3 months or 4 months, whatever it was horrible. I think I might have had 1 small episode after that, or 2 small episodes where I felt like I was choking, but not much. But I had other symptoms. I mean, there were so many symptoms that you couldn't keep up. And the numbness and tingling, and then but I do remember, one thing I do remember, and it was around that same time period, I had this massive headache like I had never had in my life. I had to go to bed for 3 days. I mean, I got up, put the kids on the bus, or however I was doing it at the time, and I went back to bed. I mean, matter of fact, I remember my daughter, I was homeschooling. Yes, I was still homeschooling, I think, at least her at the time. And I remember laying in bed and putting the computer next to the bed so she could do her schoolwork. And I would homeschool from my bed because my headache was so incredibly bad, like nothing I'd ever experienced before. So, I went through about 16 doctors before doctor number 17, the ER doctor, discovered what it was. And the journey afterward was still winding and long, and many doctors, and there was nothing at that point that they said they could do. It'd have to heal on itself. And it was just the scariest time of my life. But during that time, I needed help. I mean, I was scared to be there by myself. And if something happened, and I knew this little old man who went to church all the time, who lived in the back of a thrift shop. I call him the 100-year-old man. He wore big orthopedic shoes, and he had a little dog, and the little dog was a very smart little dog. It liked to watch Charlotte's Web, and we had the old VHS player, and as soon as the tape was done, it would bark for us to rewind it and start it over again. It was the cutest little dog. But anyhow, that little 100-year-old man would come over, and I would go pick him up in my expedition, and with my 3 kids, he'd bring all of his stuff, just, come over for the day. He'd bring tons of stuff. I mean, it's like we look like the Beverly Hillbillies coming back every time. And he would come over, he would cook, he would do all kinds of things. But in many ways, he was like having a 4th child, because he had physical issues, and one time he tripped over his feet and he fell down. And I'll never forget, I was so terrified when he flipped, and he said, "Nope, don't worry about it. I bounce." And he got back up with his orthopedic shoes, and he kept on going. But he was a wonderful blessing during that time. He would help me cook, he would help me clean, and he loved being there because, well, he didn't really have a home, and he really didn't have family. And so, you know, he helped me on and off, and I was very, very grateful to him, you know, just doing the cooking. And, you know, he'd bring his little dog with him, and the little dog would watch Charlotte's Web over and over and over, the 100-year-old man. And my neighbors were wonderful. And I did discover fair weather friends, you know, that be careful who you depend on and who you believe in. And yes, I'm still friends at some level with this friend, but I realized that she disappeared on me when I needed her the most, and I would have been there for her. I'm so there for my friends. I'm so there. And during this whole time, you know, I had just gotten out of the hospital. My sister calls me, and she said, I'm going to go play. She lived in another state, and she said, I'm going to go play board games with my friend. That's what she did every Friday or Saturday night. She played board games. And normally she went to her friend's house, but it was at her friend's daughter's house. And as my sister was going up this road, she hit what is called black ice. And her car spun around, and she went over the hill and hit a tree. She was wedged in there. They had to get the jaws of life out. So about 11 o'clock at night, her friend's son contacted me through email and said, please call Mom right away. So I called my sister's friend, his mom, and she said, Ruth was in an automobile accident. She's in the hospital. So right away I called, and I talked to my sister. She was in intensive care at that point, but she was okay. She was okay. She was lucid. She was fine. She said, really sore, but they want to keep me. Well, the next day, they sent her down to a CAT scan or whatever it was, but they put that dye in her, and she reacted. She ended up on a respirator. And it was horrible. It was horrible. I essentially was the one that the doctors were contacting, and I couldn't go to her because I had 3 little kids, and I could barely drive myself, and I was so sick. And so I'm dealing with my sister's issue from afar, constantly with the doctors. And she was on now on this respirator for the next 4.5 months. And it was horrible, 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 horrible. Finally, I went on a fast somewhere, I think it was in April, I think. I went on a fast, and, you know, I believe miracles happen when we're on fast, you know. I don't suggest it or recommend it to anybody. I'm just saying what I did. I went on a water fast. And during that time, they took my sister off that ventilator, and her son called me and said, would you like to talk to Mom? And I talked to her. Now, she was screaming. She was hysterical. I want water. I want water. She was just horrified. And I think she was off of that respirator for about 3 days. So there was a miracle in there. I got to talk to her again, such as it was. And another time I went on a fast when my mom was sick, right before she passed on. And my mom had been out of her mind. At that point, she had to go to the nursing home because she was so physically devastated with ALS and Parkinson's and everything. And my mother had been extremely with, I don't want to say dementia because I don't think it was dementia, but she was extremely crazy would be kind of the word to put it, in the nursing home. I mean, she was not able to move in bed. Her body was just, she was just withered away. But during that fast, all of a sudden, she came out of whatever that was and was totally normal for about 2 weeks. And it was the best Christmas gift I could have ever gotten. The best Christmas gift. I mean, she was just as lucid as could be. And then she slipped back into it. And that was a whole nother story. But anyhow, my sister went back on the respirator, and just a few weeks later, she had passed. And I'd gone to church that night, and I came home, and I walked in, and I had an answering machine, and I checked the answering machine because I just felt that my sister had passed. I just knew she had passed. And, you know, I believe I've got that gift of knowing, but there was no message. And then I picked up the phone rang, I picked up the phone a couple minutes after I got into the house, and someone had called me and said, your sister has passed. So that was a horrible year. It was just a horrible, horrible year of my life. And I gradually started to get better and get better and get better. By the time summer rolled around, I was almost back to completely normal. And then we moved. Then we moved to where we're at now. Well, not the same house. We moved to a house temporary. I told my husband, I will move if you can rent me a house. Now, we own this one, but at that time I said, if you can rent me a house that we can park the motorhome next to and that has a big swimming pool. Well, he did both. So I moved. And so we all moved up here. And I just steadily got better. And I went back to running and exercising and doing all the things, juicing and everything that I've always done and living a full life. But it was very scary. It was probably the scariest time in my life because I felt like I had no control over my life. I was always the strong one. I was always the person everyone depended on. I had 3 little kids. What were they going to do? I was so scared of losing Diana, Brienne, but most of all, I was scared of my kids losing me because I knew that I was the mom. I was a great mom. I am a great mom. And I didn't want my kids to lose me. And I didn't want to lose me either. I loved who I am. I loved everything about me. I loved my story, my struggle, my histories, my accomplishment. I love me. I love myself, and that's a good thing. Not being arrogant or anything. But I wanted to most of all be there for my kids. And there's probably a lot of details I'm forgetting in this, but I found the good in people and I found the bad in people during that time. I found that sometimes you have to keep pushing through until you find the answers, and sometimes people will tell you that you're wrong. And I can tell you that from my experiences, I totally respect doctors, and so many doctors do amazing jobs, but they're not 100% all the time in my belief. And we'd like to think doctors are like God and that they know everything, but in this situation, I went through 16 doctors to get the diagnosis. So was this all a brain aneurysm? Was it mold? Was it anxiety? From everything that the doctors told me, it was a brain aneurysm. Although be it a small one, it had profound impact upon my life. Where it was located, being a small one, probably from the trauma related, to the wooden hanger, I survived. I survived. And many people don't survive. I went to a support group for people who have strokes and brain aneurysms. I went to a support group after that, and many were in wheelchairs. Many had just so many things that had gone on. And so as bad as all my story was, and as bad as all the symptoms were, I think that I was a walking brain aneurysm, if that's what you want to put it. I'd never heard of such a thing. I've never heard of anybody having one like that. But even with all those symptoms, I was so much better off than what it could have been. And I think the hardest part too was not knowing what it was. And, thinking maybe I had anxiety. Was I having anxiety, or was it mold, or was it, what could it be? What could it be? What could it be? And that was the scariest part, that unknown. So once they gave me a label for it, and I don't like labels, but once they gave me, what they thought it was, and so today I'm doing wonderful. I'm amazing. I don't take any medications. I run, but I don't take anything for granted. I don't take life for granted, ever, ever, ever. I don't take anything for granted. And so that's my story. It's a long-winded story. I wanted to share it with you. I have a lot of other stories, different kinds of stories to share. And, periodically I'll probably share some of them with you. And some of you may have heard these stories before, but I'm trying to give more important details of it. And I'm not saying that I'm an example of what a brain aneurysm is, because some people are devastated by it. They're in wheelchairs. They struggle terribly. And, so I'm not the classic example of one. Most brain aneurysms, a lot of people die suddenly. A lot of people are wheelchair bound and have to go through a tremendous amount of rehabilitation. They did put me in some kind of rehabilitation for a while, but I quit it because I felt like I could do better myself. I mean, it was like, I went there and they put my arm in a machine that didn't seem to do any good, because I was having problems with, just numbness and all of that. And so it was a crazy, crazy, crazy time of my life. And, I feel for people going through any kind of health crisis, especially people who actually go through a major brain aneurysm or a major stroke or a heart attack or whatever, cancer, anything. This was my journey, and I'm not trying to compare or tell people how their journey is going to look or, what their symptoms are going to be like or they're going to have the same outcome or anything. I'm just sharing with you what I've been through and my best understanding of it. And even to this day, I really don't understand it. I don't understand what exactly happened to me. And, it was deemed a brain aneurysm. It was deemed a small, tiny vessel that had broken that apparently caused all these problems. And I mean, fortunately, it was a small, tiny vessel compared to a big vessel, because if it was a big vessel, I likely wouldn't have lived, or I would have been in a wheelchair. So, life is unpredictable. And so I live fully in the moment. I live fully in today. And so this is my story. It's not someone else's story. It's not recommendations. It's not suggestions. It's not saying what someone else's story is going to be like or have the same outcome or the same way or whatever. It's not saying anything. It's not saying that somebody with all those symptoms has the same thing that I did. I'm not saying any of that. I'm just sharing with you my story, where I have been in my life, and being scared. I was scared. I remember riding around in the car, and I would look at people playing their music and all that, and I'm riding around and I'm looking at people and saying, their life is so normal, and I may die. I may die. I may die. I thought I was going to die. I really did. I really did. And so I'm here. I'm here 10 years later. I'm here. I'm here to tell you my story. Okay. And that was really one of the reasons I started my YouTube channel, was so that I could put up my daily wisdom to my children and let them have my wisdom. So if I wasn't around, they would have it. And so I started my YouTube channel for my kids. And then 8 months ago, 9 months ago, whatever it's been now, I came more public, where I actually have decided to share with the public in a public way. And so I'm here. I'm here. So thank you all for listening to my story. I know it was long-winded, but there's somebody out there that maybe can identify with bits and pieces of it, or may say that they're going through their own struggle, and it gives them hope that they'll get through their struggle. And so I wish you all a wonderful day, a wonderful week, a wonderful everything, a wonderful life. And so from my house to yours, may God bless you. And so from Grandma's porch to yours, to wherever you're at, I hope to talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Brain aneurysm, when I thought I was going to die. My story.